I just had such a good conversation with my dear friend Cole Flanders. He shared about their experience as a family, becoming a family of more than just he and Alicia during COVID, as well as during his time becoming a Chick-fil-A operator where he was traveling all over the country. So he's got some great insights and wisdom to share with us. I'm so excited for you to hear from my dear friend. Here's Cole Flanders. Welcome to the Family Table. I'm Matthew Eford. Join me as I speak with parents, caregivers, and family experts about the joys and challenges of family life. We'll share the stories, advice, and insights that will help you build a loving and resilient family. Pull up a chair and join us at the family table. Welcome, everyone, to the family table. I have my dear friend Cole Flanders here with me. Cole and his wife Alicia are embarking on a new journey as Chick-fil-A operators. We're so excited for them. They're actually in the moving process. So, Cole, I really appreciate you taking time for us today. Cole and Alicia have been friends of ours since college, and we've watched them grow as a couple and now as parents. And so I'm really excited to get some feedback and some wisdom from Cole. So, Cole, just as you kind of start out, tell us about your family and the role that you play in it.
Yeah, so family, like you mentioned, my wife, Alicia, we've been married over 9 years now, got married right out of college. I think we're about a year and a week behind you and Hannah.
Nice.
So we... 9 years, the first 4 years were just us, and then got pregnant. And so now we have a 4.5-year-old girl. And then I think he just hit or coming up on 17-month-old son. So boy and girl, kind of split roughly 3 years apart. And so Hazel's our girl, Alden's the boy, and they are, as any parent would attest or would say about their kids, they're wild and high energy, and we love being parents for them. So my role, obviously, as a father, but I take that a little more deeply. I feel that I am the head of our household and want to lead my family. And most important for Alicia and I is leading our children to hopefully what will be probably the two most glorious days of our lives is seeing them accept Christ in their own hearts. And so, I say head of household, that can be kind of a broad term for me, and I won't dive too deep. I'm sure we'll hit it more, but my biggest thing is how can I show my kids that I love my wife, and that she is essentially the most important person in my life, so that they can see how to, for my daughter, how a man should love a woman and treat her, and then for my son, how should he ultimately treat his spouse, and we view that because of what we feel like Christ has told us, and from the biblical representation of marriage and families is let me show them, and then be able to show them the love of Christ through that love and relationship.
I love that. Yeah, I love that so much. I love the way that you're modeling that for your kids, right? I mean, we've said on here before, and I'm sure we'll say it again, so much in our lives, more is caught than taught. And so your kids are catching that. I've been witness of that for many, many years of you and your faithfulness. And so I admire that a lot. So talk to us about family, your family makeup. Like, do you do a lot of traditions? Do you have a lot of things that you say, hey, in our family, this is what we do every year, every month, every week? Talk to us through some of kind of those traditions that you have.
Yeah, before I really dive in on that, I want to do a quick caveat. I saw in your description that you were going to be meeting with some parenting experts, and I would like to clarify that I am not that. I am someone who tries my best and is trying to, like I said, shepherd my children to the Lord, and my wife and I grow our strength. But if somebody is listening and is like, man, this guy's an expert, he's not. I am a parent, just like everyone else, trying my best. And so you talk about traditions and things. When we got married, we never had or when we first had kids, I should say, we really want to do X, Y, Z all the time. And yes, there's things such as, we want to do Christmas morning, and obviously the big ones. But for me, I'll say the most special is every Sunday morning, my 4-year-old runs in our room and starts saying, we need to go make muffins. We have to make muffins. And literally, it's like the $1.50 pack of muffins that you add water to. And her and I, she calls us the muffin makers, and we go down and we make muffins. And it is just like this fun 15, 20, 30 minutes times we spend together. She gets chocolate milk every Sunday. That's like the one day she gets chocolate milk. And it's just become this like weekly tradition. Hey, we start our Sundays off and we go to church afterwards and all, but it's like fun, and it just originated. And the reason I wanted to do that caveat of I'm no expert of, that is something that I would never have thought of coming into parenting. It's like, we're going to make muffins every Sunday and it's going to be the highlight of our week. But it's just become this time that her and I always have together. And my son's too young to make the muffins, but I'm sure he'll either find something else or we'll make muffins with him. But it was just having the opportunity and taking that opportunity of, hey, my wife wants to lay in bed an extra 20 minutes. And so how can I take her and do something? And so it was really just that time commitment that has turned into something so special for us.
That's really sweet. That'll be something so fun that she looks back on fondly, to see the time that you invested in her, right? That you're saying, hey, you're important to me. I'm going to spend some time with you. It's something silly. It's something little, making muffins, but it's really, really sweet time that you get to invest in her. And as she grows, the conversations grow, right? That is, you've established a baseline to be able to continue to engage with her. Back to your caveat, right? None of us are experts. May need to change the terminology there, right? None of us are experts, but you are following after the Lord, and that's the ultimate thing, is that you and your family are seeking after the Lord first, and you're seeking to say, hey, what's the best that we can do with what we've been given, knowing that we have grace for when we mess up, when we fail, but that we've been given an opportunity to invest in specifically our children, right? You said earlier about the two greatest days are when your kids accept Christ. So that's what we've been praying for our boys. And the church that we're at Galilee, we will do baptism, and we celebrate that as we should, and we talk about that commitment that we're making to the Lord. And anytime one of the kids comes up, I'm weeping, or at least crying, because I'm actively praying for that for our boys. Of like, I am so excited for that day when the Lord takes them from death to life. I'm so excited to celebrate that.
Yeah, I mean, I literally, as you're talking about, I get chills thinking of seeing my daughter's very bright blonde hair, just naturally, of one day seeing that blonde hair coming out of the water. It's just, it'll be glorious. And I mean, like I said, chills, almost getting teared up over here. So it's going to be a great time, and it'll be a great time getting to see and hear about your boys. And I mean, I think it's the dream of every Christ following parent is that day. Sure, you pray for, as we do, what are our kids' spouses? Are they even born yet? And if they are, like, are they following Christ? Like, we hope they are, and we hope they go to good schools, but more importantly, like, what decisions do they make and things like that. But the biggest decision is that one. Yeah, I love that. And it is important that this is a reminder of folks, if they're not praying for their kids, but specifically for their kids' spouses. That's something that Hannah and I started years ago, and we've tried to remain steadfast in that, of praying for our boys, their future wives, and also for their future wives' parents, and just to give them the endurance to run this race well. Because they will mess up, but it's always trying to seek after the Lord on all that you do. So talk to us about, you've been a dad now for going on 5 years. What would you say is one of the most rewarding aspects of parenting for you? Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a ton. And I think for me, I'll probably bounce around a lot of little things today as we talk of, last night, small example, we put my son down at 7, my daughter, hey, let's go water the flowers. We went and bought some flowers as we moved in the other day. So we're watering flowers, and she gets her hand wet and says, Daddy, I'm going to touch you with my wet hand. I said, no, you're not. And next thing you know, we spend 20 minutes chasing each other around the house. And just her giggling and laughing, and she could literally run over and like dip her hand back in the soil to like re-wet it, as if I even care if it's wet or not. but it's just those simple things. And for me, is really came about because of time. And time is a finite resource. We only have so much, and I can't get last minute back. I can't get last year back. And so how do I shepherd that time as best as possible so that I am present in their lives, so that I can be there for those little moments like that. And I know I'm going to miss some. Like, work has to happen. And that's something we instill in our kids, that it's kind of it started as just a funny saying, and you realize how much kids pick up on, of like, daddy has to go to work, and well, why does he have to go? Well, daddy's going to make money so we can, buy food and have the house and all. And now it's sometimes she'll say, daddy probably should go to work so he can make money because we need to eat. It's like, we do, but don't really know that you fully understand the concept. And so I say all that from being present, having those times is probably the most rewarding. I shouldn't say there hasn't been. There's been great times of bringing my son home from the hospital and seeing her reaction and her learning to walk and all those milestones. But just that everyday joy is the giggling, the tossing him up in the air, the chasing her around. That's what fuels me each day. And it's like, and this is fun to be a parent. Yeah.
And I know for me, right, my parents I had incredible parents. I'm very blessed to have that. And they did big things for us. We went on, big trips, which were fun. But I can think back and look over the years, and there are so many of the memories that last with me are the little things. And you brought out something there that I think is so important about being present, right? We can, great example. This morning, I'm making coffee, right? The little K-cup machine, this is my second cup of coffee, and I am over helping one of the boys get something going for their breakfast. And I look up, the K-cup machine is finished, and the coffee is all over the counter. Well, my coffee cup is not in the machine. It's sitting beside the machine. And I just started it and walked away and didn't put my cup underneath it. And it made this huge mess. Had to clean it up. But all that to say is, how often do I, as a dad, go into time with my boys that distracted? That is, how simple is it to make coffee? It's super easy, especially with the K-cup. How many times have I made that cup of coffee? So many times. But I allow myself to be so distracted. So one thing I know that we talked about it on here before, but Hen and I have really tried to be intentional about in the afternoons, putting our phone away. Because, man, I just get so engaged, especially in the business world, also on social media, but I feel so pulled in so many directions, and it's hard to have present time. So I love that you're trying to be intentional to say, hey, in the time that I'm investing, because you're investing that in your children, you really, really want to be present.
Yeah. And I mean, that is the hardest thing for me, is that, I mentioned in the last one of, I love shepherding, stewarding that time, but it's effort. And I think if anybody listens, or, you read books and all, and people just, spend time, put the phone away. Well, it's way easier said than done. It's easy to set my phone down and then realize 3 seconds later, I picked it back up. Oh yeah, I've put it away. And then Alicia kicks me under the table and is like, what are you doing? It's like, I didn't even realize I had picked it up. An alert went off or something. And so it's just a habit that then I have to be very intentional of, like I said, running around last night for 20 minutes with my daughter. I intentionally, when we went to do flowers, put the phone away, like by my bedside table, like somewhere I'm not going to see it when we're in the living room, not going to see it when we're outside, like put it away, so that when I'm out there, I can focus on her. And so I have to, I mean, that's something I work at, and it's a struggle, and I'm not perfect by any means. I'm not even good, I would say, but it's something that I want to be better at. And I've seen the benefit in my children, or even in my wife, when, we're eating together.
Sure.
Definitely an opportunity that I would encourage anybody to kind of self-evaluate. What's your cell phone use? What's your engagement? And how can you tweak or make that better if you feel you need to?
I love that. Yeah, I think that's an incredible piece of advice. So you're teaching Hazel how to water the flowers. I think that's a great time, daddy-daughter time. It's also helping teach her responsibility, right? These are things that we bought. We paid money for them. They take care, so we have to give them care. So what are some other ways that y'all are trying to teach your kids about responsibility? What are some things that y'all are doing?
Yeah, I think for us, there's some values in our family that we instill, and one of them is hard work. And that doesn't mean that we're always, every second, let's be out in the yard doing something, or we need to be, growing a crop or something. But it's definitely, hey, it's okay to work. It's okay to do things. And so it's okay if you have to go out and water the flowers. Chores are fine. You have to pick up your room. And so we just never want our kids to be in this culture of everything is entitled, everything's about me. No, it's not about you. Yeah. And so like every night when she goes to bed, her room is picked up, and 75% of it is her doing. Like we help her and we make her essentially be like, can y'all help me? Well, maybe you need to ask more. And I said, can you please help me? Okay, we'll come help you. But like, and she's a typical first child, organized, like wants everything in line. Typical first child girl, I should say. Okay. So like she typically will kind of keep her things cleaned up, but also like we've worked at that, and that we had to cultivate and instill that early and encourage and celebrate like, hey, you picked up your toys, great job. And so obviously her responsibility is less than mine. But hey, did you put your plate up at the end of dinner? Did you say your manners? Did you, like I said, clean up or water the flowers? Little things like that. Obviously age appropriate for a 4-year-old, but what are you doing that is going to make you understand that life is not all about you? And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like It is about you in terms of your relationship with Christ, and like, you are important and you are loved and you are beautiful and like all of those things, but also you answer to authority, and that is super important to instill in our children.
I love that. Yeah. And it's so good to instill that now rather than at 13 or 18 or 25, that it's, we the other day we're taking Abel to his mother's morning out kind of preschool, and he's in the 3-year-old class. And one of the ladies at the preschool, we were picking him up, and we said, how's it going? And she said, today was a day. We said, okay. And she said, some of the kids here have never heard no, so they're going to hear no now. And I was just like, wow. And she was being facetious. She's maybe hyperbole, but the idea was the structure of teaching our children that life is not just about them. And as adults, we struggle with that, right? But as a follower of Christ, we know innately that at the root of who we are is a Christ follower. And so it is not about us. It's just not. And so the more that we can teach them early, the better that the groundwork that we can lay.
Yeah, I think for us, Alicia and I talk often of, it's not that we don't have rules, because we have plenty of rules, but what concepts can we teach? And you had mentioned earlier that, hey, I'm moving. Quick 5-second backstory. I work with Chick-fil-A and going to be a Chick-fil-A operator. So I work around a lot of high school, early college age teenagers. And it's, I say this example, we'll relate it to 4-year-old, because you just edit the ages. But if somebody is taking out the trash and comes in and wraps a sandwich and doesn't change their gloves, I can tell them, hey, don't do that. You need to change your gloves. You need to wash your hands. And they may not do that again. But if everyone else is doing that, I didn't change the system.
Sure.
And so, hey, we need to make a system so that when you come in, you change your gloves, whatever it is, a reminder, a sign, a leader's paying attention to it, X, Y, Z, so that is just the norm. And so for our kids, it's easy to say, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And then the next day they're jumping on the couch instead of jumping on the bed. And they don't understand the difference, as opposed to, mommy and daddy said that you need to stop jumping on things. And we said that yesterday. And so you need to respect authority. And so helping them understand a more concept of, when we say something, it means to do or not to do that, and not just, well, don't do this today, but tomorrow it's okay. And you're bouncing around. What is our concept, if you will, of respecting authority, of being kind to one another, of the responsibility, all those different things. And they're not necessarily set concepts or rules
Sure.
Systems we have, but it's much more, what is the thing that I can help instill now at 4 that, like you said, that I'm not having to be down at 13. It's still going to be an issue. A 13-year-old girl or boy is always going to be their own person.
Sure.
But hopefully at 13, they know, hey, dad said I can't go to this party. And I respect what my dad says. I may disagree with it, and I may go sit in my room for a while, but my dad has consistently protected me and looked after me. And I understand and respect when he says no. And so that's what we think about a lot is, hey, how do we instill concepts now that our kids are consistent in our lives? And really, I would say consistent concepts. You can't change this week. There's a Paul David Tripp series where he talks about parents go on vacation with their kids, and they actually just go on vacation. All right, it's time to come in for dinner from the beach. No, we don't want to. Okay, whatever. Stay out there. And it's like, well, last week you told them that they respect you. This week they're talking back, but you don't care because you're at the beach. Like, parenting shouldn't go on vacation. Yeah. And so little things like that of, hey, we got to be on all the time. Much more conceptual based. I don't mean that as theory, but like, what can we instill in the kids now that is going to carry through the course of time besides just don't jump on the bed?
Sure. Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're giving them kind of a clear definition of why we're doing some of these things, giving them more of the backstory, giving them an undergirth of, you can trust your mom and dad, and you know that we love you. Same way with the Lord, right? The Lord is the same today as he was yesterday, as he will be tomorrow. And so the more consistent we can be as parents, the better opportunity we give for our children to learn and for them to follow directions, to be respectful, knowing that our kids are, I had a friend of mine come to the hospital and he held Walker in his hand and he goes, man, what a beautiful little sinner. And I was like, that is so true. And it is so true that we have beautiful little sinners, and we have to remind ourselves of that as parents, that they are not perfect and that we are not raising perfect children. We're raising children that we're hoping will pursue after Christ. And so the way that we can help them navigate grace and mercy is very important, but also accountability and taking accountability for our actions is really important too. So you mentioned Chick-fil-A. We love Chick-fil-A. I've been so excited for you and your journey. But one thing that I think is really unique in y'all's family is that Chick-fil-A journey, which some people may know is part of that journey. Some people may not know the full story, but in terms of becoming an operator, right, you traveled all over the country, it felt like. And it was, sometimes you were there for a few weeks, sometimes it was there for a couple of months. Talk to us through kind of that period in your life and what you learned, because you said it earlier, but give us a little bit more detail around the idea of investing time in your family and investing time at work. Like, there's a pull between that. I think balance is a myth, so it's not in balance. But how do you navigate investing those two times when you're in a program and now opening your own store that is very time intensive, demanding?
Yeah, it was, we worked in Athens at Chick-fil-A for a couple of years and then traveled around with Chick-fil-A's leadership development program. So as you mentioned, we were in Pennsylvania for a month, California for a month, North Carolina for a month. Just all over. And it was during that time when we became pregnant with my daughter. And before that, my wife worked with Chick-fil-A, so we may work 55, 60 hours, but we were normally at the restaurant together, and we were, our paths crossed so often, you didn't feel it as much because you were still spending a lot of time together, maybe not always quality, but you were still around each other. And so when she was born, March of 2020, right at COVID, a fantastic time to have a child. That just shifted. And I did a poor job of time management. We're in this program, and that program had essentially a specific end time. It's a 2 to 2.5 year program, and then you exit the program. And so my goal and our goal going in together was, we bust it for this 2.5 years and hopefully get an opportunity to be an operator. Well, when 1.25 years in, she's born, my goal is still, I'm going to keep busting it for the next 15 months and like set ourselves up. And my wife was more like, hey, no, I think things have changed a little bit. And so there was a difficult time in our life of just postpartum anxiety and me
Sure.
then having to go back out and travel while she was still at home and us being separate and not separated in that terms, but just physically we're apart. And so just a difficult time of, hey, we've got to get to the end of this program, but also this is not working. And so one of the things going into that program we had always said was, or I had always told her, is if at any point you need me to walk away, I will. If this is going to affect our marriage, it's not worth it. Nothing is worth coming in between our marriage. And there were times we had good conversations of, do we want to continue on this or not? It's tough right now. And we ultimately, through much prayer and talks, said, let's keep pursuing it. And so when we exited that program, moved back to her hometown in Augusta, Georgia, to work at a Chick-fil-A while we continued this pursuit. And life was able to balance more because I wasn't in that super intensive program. And so that helped me a lot step back and say, I can work from, I may even open the restaurant today, but when 2 or 3 o'clock hits and I'm off, let me actually go home. And so that was especially in hindsight, a great season in our life. It was super hard because in that time we were continually applying to stores. I think I got 36 different no's throughout those 3 years, and 37th finally got accepted for Valley, Alabama. And so that was many hardships from that side, but it was also a good season looking back of that helped me realign and recalibrate some. Yeah. So as we're getting ready to open the restaurant now, we know in the upcoming months, there's going to be plenty of 80, 90, 100-hour weeks. But how quickly can we scale that back? And also, am I still going to spend some quality time? You had mentioned we moved intentionally about 1/3 of a mile from the restaurant so that on an afternoon when the restaurant slows down, I can run home for an hour and actually see the family and not drive 20 minutes out of the way to be there for 5 minutes to turn around. And so we've intentionally done some things so that through this season, it's not dad's gone for 2 years and then came back, or a year and came back. Sure. I may not see dad as much, but he's still present in my life. And so, long journey and didn't want to ramble there, but definitely some things we've put in our lives to say, we know it's going to increase and be busier than it is right now as the store's still being built. But how can I still be dad and most importantly, be husband to Alicia and continue leading our family in that capacity.
I love that. I love the intentionality. You said that, but I think it's so important to point out just a little bit further that you're being intentional with your time. Yes, it's going to be a high demand on your time, specifically as you're opening the store. Anyone who's opened a business knows the demands. It just never turns off. And then even as your business grows, you will still feel like it never turns off. But one thing that you can do is you can be intentional. You can be intentional, which is exactly what you're saying. You can be intentional to choose the house, and maybe it's not the exact house we want, but it's 1/3 of a mile from the store. I can literally run home if I need to physically run home. I can get there. And so will you always live 1/3 of a mile from the store? No, probably not. But in this season, I think that was such a wise decision. And I think what's important here is that you're thinking strategically as a couple, as the man leading your family, but also bringing Alicia into that conversation. And one day you're bringing your kids in that conversation of how can we be strategic to navigate. We see this season coming, and we're going to be strategic to navigate it well together as a family, instead of just saying, hey, we're in the throes of a season, which sometimes happens. But I love that you are forward thinking in that, and you're starting to look down the road a little bit and say, what's kind of coming on the horizon? How can we navigate that well as a family?
For sure.
So talk to me about, you said Paul David Tripp. I love Paul David Tripp. Hannah and I have read a lot of his materials. So maybe he's a resource, but talk to us about a resource that has really informed the way that you parent. It could be a book, it could be a podcast, it could be a sermon series. What's kind of a resource that you've used that's really helped inform that way that you and Alicia parent?
Yeah, I think he's been very influential. Our church that we obviously just moved from, but had done for several months, essentially in place of Sunday school, or if you will, that was our Sunday school, was a parenting almost conference every week. Nice. And like we went through some of his videos, which were fantastic. That really helped us with as I mentioned earlier, the concepts of, hey, from and I forget the exact ages, but from 0 to 6 is like instilling authority, and then it went through and different things. And my mind's blanking on the exact name of that video series.
No, it's okay. Yeah. I'll put it in the show notes. Awesome.
That one was fantastic. And then they showed a video one week that I felt like I was getting knocked out of the chair. It was so good. And it was just a one clip. But the guy talked about like, what is the goal of raising children? And he's like, oh, is it to be successful and happy and blah, blah. He's like, would you rather look back and your child's 60 years old on their second or third marriage, like, has struggled with some abuse stuff and but they're relatively healthy. They're just, 60 years old, or would you rather have a 21-year-old that died in the mission field?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, like, on the surface, I'm like, I want my kid to live as long as possible. And that's what everyone, I feel like when my kids were born, that was the goal, was how do I keep them safe to, grow up and live successful?
Sure.
And in reality, it's like, if my daughter dies at 21 in the mission field, spreading the gospel, then like, honestly, pat on the back to Alicia and I, not that I want her to die, but like, if she felt so compelled to go somewhere in the name of Jesus, then like, we did a good job parenting, as the relative term. But that one just like knocked me in a good way of like, wow, what are we doing here? And how are we actually, taking our children and looking long-term, and not just, let me get you to 18 where you can go to college, or like,
sure,
you need to go to the best college or the best high school or whatnot. It's like, if you said, you're a mature early 30s guy, if I said you could go back to a different high school and you will get 20% less education, but you'll learn more about Christ and you'll be more emboldened in your walk to spread the word of Christ because you had to in high school because you were an outlier.
Sure.
I think a lot of us might say, yeah, like I struggle with sometimes witnessing, and like that's uncomfortable, but I know all my X, Y, and Z's of math. And so, hey, maybe she doesn't go to the high school that is the top rated, but if is in an opportunity for her to witness to others and to grow her faith, then maybe that's more important. And maybe we look at that as opposed to just, is she getting the best education? Does she have the best coach? Does she have, the best hair and all these things? And so that was a hugely impactful series, the Paul David Tripp and that video kind of in conjunction with each other.
I love that. Yeah, it's such a good perspective, right? Because the culture will tell us that all the culture things are what's most important. And what the Lord tells us is no, it's what His will for their life is most important. And that they were in a relationship with them, in a relationship with their Heavenly Father. And the hard part of that, which is I've seen my parents do, and folks that we've talked to on this forum have discussed, and I anticipate having difficulty with. We're having some of that with Walker, of giving over the autonomy of, this is your relationship with the Lord. This is not my relationship with the Lord. I have my own relationship with the Lord, but you have yours, and He will speak to you in ways and directly that He doesn't speak to me. And there's a time where I hand over, quote unquote, control of that communication. That right now, as the head of our house, I'm helping steward that conversation. But my goal in stewarding that conversation is pointing him to the one that the conversation's with, and then handing the reins, per se, over to him. And if the Lord calls him into the mission field, then that's incredible. And if the Lord calls him into Chick-fil-A ownership, that's incredible. But it's the ultimate goal for us, which is what you're saying, is that we're pointing them to the one who is the author and perfecter of our faith. We're pointing them back to the person of Jesus Christ, and that he is the one that calls them into what is best for their life. That we may think we know best, but we truly don't.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So talk to me about early parenthood, right? Obviously, you became a parent during COVID, which was a wild time to become a parent. You were traveling all over the world. If you could go back either to y'all or if you could go now to the hospital, right? Every parent before they leave the hospital, what's a piece of advice that you would give them?
I'm going to cheat and give two.
Okay, that's fine.
The first one someone had told me before we had my daughter was cherish the time with them because they're not yours, they're the Lord's. And it was like, we were pregnant, we're like 7-8 months pregnant. I'm like, no, it's my kid. It's like I wanted to feel, but it's like, man, you're so right. Like we are just called to help shepherd them in that direction, but ultimately they're the Lord's and hopefully they will live with him forever. And so I am, for lack of a better term, I am in a very small, hopefully, time frame, because if we're talking about infinite time they're going to spend with the Lord in eternity, I'm just a little caregiver here. And so putting that in perspective sometimes of, you know what, I may try to control every little bit of their lives, or I feel that I want to. I mentioned schools and this and that, and it's like you want to do that, but ultimately, as we just referenced a fair amount of like, they are the Lord's and shepherd them as best as possible. And the second one I would say is if you are talking to your kids, admit your own weaknesses. We talk about sin so much in our house, and we admit our own sin to our kids so that when we're telling our daughter, hey, you disobeyed because you have sin in your heart, that she doesn't just feel like I'm a terrible sinner and my parents are perfect people. There have been times that, she's like, well, Daddy, why did you look upset? Well, I got upset and, maybe I tossed the wrench to the side because I had anger, and that's sinful. And I need to work on that. And she, okay. To see that in her eyes of us admitting, hey, we have sin as well, and we are broken sinners, I think makes it not okay to be a sinner, but makes it more realistic of, my parents need Jesus too.
Sure.
And so as she matures and gets older, realizing I need Jesus too, and not just my parents are perfect, but they always told me I was a sinner. And so I guess I'll do this Jesus thing. And so I would just say, hey, if my advice to myself would be the first one of just live that a little bit more early on. The advice to anyone else would be admit your mistakes and be very open and transparent with your children.
I love that. Yeah, that's such a good word to be able to the latter part there to show them that we are not the Savior, and as dads specifically, right? I mean, we're fixers. God's called us to do that, and He's equipped us to do that. But we're not able to fix our kids, and we're not able to save them. And so, always kind of pointing back to this gives them freedom to know that their value is not based on their perfection. We're showing them, hey, Dado, that's what my boys call me. Dado makes mistakes. Here's a mistake I made. Here's sin in my life. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give this back to the Lord and apologize and seek retribution. So let's go. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate all of the incredible insights and hearing more of y'all's stories. So let's end on this. This is a question that we like to try to wrap up the conversation. So outside of passing along your faith, we've talked about that a lot. Is there any kind of one piece of wisdom or tradition that you would love to be able to pass on to your kids that they hopefully can continue to pass on to future generations?
Yeah, for us, I won't even say it's a family tradition because I think it's biblical. But several years ago, Alicia and I felt more convicted to Sabbath, and we spent every Sunday actually Sabbathing. And there are Sundays where we haven't been able to, like we moved this past Sunday. And so that Friday before, we said, hey, we're going to take this day as a family and Sabbath and give it to the Lord. And so that is something we have basically since my daughter was 1.5 or 2 have done. And so she just knows Sundays are when we hang out. And we have several things. I won't dive into all of them with Sabbathing, but one of the biggest things is we don't want to be legalistic with it.
Yeah.
And by that, I don't want to be like, oh no, you can't, cut your toenail because that's work and this isn't work. And now we're like condemning each other. And it's like, we have some things in our family that we say, hey, we're not going to do on a Sunday. Like, we just don't do laundry. We try to take a break from some chores.
Nice.
But a big thing for us is we're going to spend time. And sometimes I'm exhausted at the end of a Sunday, it feels like, because we took a family walk and we played in the yard and we spent quality time together. But we rested from outside work. We rested from chores. We rested from that. And we just spent time as a family, spent time at church, spent time worshiping. And that is just something that I would encourage if anybody doesn't Sabbath to start and try to incorporate. It was hard at the start. Like, it was really hard to break this mold of, I'll do some stuff on Sundays.
Sure.
But that is something that I hope that my kids continue to do, and not just as they become parents, but as they hit school age. And it's, hey, let's try to not do your homework, all cram it on a Sunday, and let's take these days and devote them to the Lord. And I promise you, He's given you enough time in 6 days to get done what you need to get done.
Yeah, I love that. And Chick-fil-A's modeled that really well, right? The Lord set that up for a reason, and He modeled that for us. And so we just want to be faithful to what God's modeling. So I love that you're doing that. I love that y'all are spending time together as a family. So Cole, man, I appreciate your time very much. Thank you for joining the family table. Thank you for sharing about your beautiful family and sharing some insights and wisdoms with us. Thank you, everybody, for following along, and we'll see you soon. Thank you for pulling up a chair at the family table. We hope today's conversation has strengthened the bonds that hold us together. Don't forget to follow the show to keep these heartwarming stories coming your way. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe and share it with friends and family. And if there's someone whose family story you think would be a perfect fit for the show, drop their name in the comments. We would love to hear from you and bring more families to the table. Until next time, cherish those moments with your loved ones.